brass and concert bands were at their best today for the New South Wales titles, but attention focused on the concert bands, which were also competing in the Australian Championships. Each band played two major selections, including an overture. First up in the A-grade section, the Hills Music Academy from Sydney. The bands competing today in the A and B grade sections mainly came from Sydney and Newcastle. They were judged by Major Harper from Queensland, musical director for the Commonwealth Games. Newcastle apparently has made quite a reputation for itself in these competitions.
We're very pleased with the way the bands have come on in the Newcastle area. In recent years, there's been a number of bands formed up there, particularly in the concert band field. City of Newcastle are only a fairly new band, but they came in at the top grade and they've stayed there ever since. They've done very well.
In the lower Hunter, while it's not exactly a case of major flooding, it has reached the nuisance stage for many farmers. Between 35 and 55 millimetres fell in the lower Hunter during the weekend, leaving pools of water in the lowlands. Some early sown summer crops got more than they bargained for with subsequent loss, but nothing serious at this stage.
Mainly in effect for dairy farmers who are finding it a bit of a nuisance because they can't graze their dairy herds on some of their cultivated ground. It's also a bit of a problem for people who have sown early summer forage crops. It's affecting the germination and also will slow down the preparation for further sowings of those particular crops. But really we can't complain because it's been really good weather. Just these last few weeks we're finding that milk production is really good at the moment, and we can't complain when you consider that some of the areas in the upper Hunter aren't anywhere near as well off as what we are here.
Australian gold medalist Mike Grender burst free of the pack to lead the field into Newcastle, with another Australian rider, Jeff Skeins, in a close second place. Skeins' second place has lifted him to just 2 minutes 19 seconds behind the overall race leader, UK rider Steve Lawrence. The riders left Foster this morning, covering 157 kilometres to Newcastle in just over 3.5 hours riding time. Since leaving Brisbane, they've been on the road some 23 hours. And race leader Lawrence, who won a gold medal in the Commonwealth Games, says it's been tough going all the way.
How does the race compare with other long-distance road races you've ridden in?
Well, this compares in toughness, you mean?
Yes.
Very favourably. I mean, to feel my legs, they're absolutely shattered at the moment, but a good night's sleep and a good feed tonight, and I'm sure we'll be as right as rain in the morning.
Do you think you can hold your lead into Sydney?
I feel fairly confident now, yes. I've got a good, strong team behind me, and hopefully, you know, if everything goes all right, I should be there at Sydney tomorrow, yes.
What's been the toughest stage of the race?
I think this morning's stage I found personally the hardest. There was an awful lot of attacks and it was very, very fast. It's the first time we've had anything like a favourable wind, and of course that encourages the race to, the riders to race.
Of the 41 riders who left Brisbane, 26 are still in the race. They'll leave Newcastle Civic Centre at 8:30 tomorrow for a non-stop ride to the finish at Pier 1 in Sydney. 400 paintings in the show were judged by Mr Robin Norling of the New South Wales Art Gallery, who said he was impressed with the overall standard. In selecting the winner, a cup of black tea, Mr Norling said he thought the artist, 18-year-old art student Paul Marr of Rutherford, had expressed real feeling. The art show, which carries total prize money of over $2,000, is divided into 4 sections, and individual winners were Mario Hermer's Rocks at Hat Head, Corkscrew by Gloria Murphy, Deep Earth by Foster artist Joan James. Carol Baker's Titanic Survival and Low Tide by Peter Lewis shared the prize in section 4.
I do think that the budget is turning out to be rubbery. In fact, that's almost praising it. It was a budget devised for an election, which the Prime Minister wanted very badly for this year.
Senator Mason, what are the Democrats doing about the so-called rubbery budget?
Well, we're going to look at the budget bills, and we think those associated bills have got things wrong with them, and we know they have. We're going to do our best to amend them. But I want to make one thing absolutely clear, that the Democrats will not go along with the Labor Party and try and force the country to an election this year.
What do you think the chances of an early election are like?
I don't think we'll have one now. I think if Mr Tonkin wins in South Australia early next month, we might have an election, but I think Mr Tonkin's chances of winning are very, very slim.
It will have a very severe impact because one has to consider the amount of money that will be available for the purchase of capital equipment, the replacing of redundant equipment at the present time is taking place, and also the present staff levels, such as the intake of apprentices. And we cast our mind back a few years with the setting up of apprentice traineeship schemes and the shortage of trained people. This is one of the most severe things that we're going to have to look at, because if you haven't got the work, you can't maintain those staff levels.
Any cutbacks next year won't be felt here. The new System Control Centre in Derby Street will be completed as planned in October 1983. Electricity tariffs apparently won't be affected by the County Council's latest acquisition, the Civic Arcade building in Hunter Street. In the near future, staff crammed into other temporary sites, such as this building in Auckland Street, will be relocated in the top floor of the Civic Arcade. But any plans to evict tenants in the lower section of this building is at least 5 years away. The markets at Sandgate were established and opened on the 27th of October 1972. Today, agents and staff celebrated 10 years of operation. In one form or another, Newcastle has always had a regional market, from its namesake in Market Street in 1870 to the site in Steele Street, Newcastle, which operated for almost 50 years. Many of the original agents in Steele Street moved on to Sandgate, and with them went people like Orr, who preferred the atmosphere of the old place.
In Steel Street, we all knew each other. No matter how many times you passed, if I passed Peter 10 times, I go, "Hey, Pete," you know, the atmosphere was there. But here, you know, I come up here sometimes to buy a little stuff. Peter's there, but I mightn't see him. You know what I mean? It's too big to what the other place used to be.
Operators have almost outgrown this site, and expansion plans are in the wind. Although it's close to Sydney, the regional markets have always attracted customers down south and up to the Queensland border.
Well, the early warning signs would be irritability, inability to carry on the job or to do it poorly, absenteeism, and the type of thing that usually happens is that a person's work performance will be falling, he'll be under his supervisor's scrutiny, and then suddenly he won't turn up for 2 or 3 days. And then this brings it to the notice of everybody that there's something radically wrong here.
But having identified these people, isn't there a risk then that they'll be singled out for retrenchment or even being sacked?
That's not the object of these industrial programs which have been introduced by the Foundation. The idea is to preserve jobs, because being a progressive disease, it means that if the alcoholic continues in employment, if he's able to, eventually he will be discharged or die. So the point is that intervention occurs at about the time of the early warning signs. It's referred to an assessment agency and hopefully to effective treatment. In about 50 to 70% of cases it is effective treatment, and will return to his job.
For the alcohol control programs to work, however, Dr Wilson said companies must be willing to apply them equally from the shop floor to the boardroom.
In a board of, say, 10 or 12 people, there would be 1 or 2 who are seriously affected, who have an alcohol problem in the general course of events.
Well, as of this morning, the councils give us official approval to go ahead on Sunday and carry out the work that needs to be done to bring the ground up to standard.
Where did the problem originate?
Going back last year, the Australian Cricket Board told us that if we didn't have sight screens of the required standard, that we couldn't have first-class fixtures here.
Well, we need first-class fixtures here after the success of that shortened fixture last year.
That's right, we're trying to promote cricket in Newcastle. We want our Newcastle players to have a chance to play national sides, and that's one of the reasons why we made the complaint.
To many people, a sight screen's a sight screen. What's the problem?
The main problem is that you can see straight through the wire. In the old days we used to have the white lattice there and it was sufficient, but now with this wire you can see through it and it's causing one hell of a problem for the batsman.
Exactly, from where the batsman stands he's a distance away, they're just inadequate.
That's right, with fast bowlers the batsman's got to have that protection of seeing the ball early.
So with the help of cricket lovers of Newcastle and now the cooperation of the council, we're going to be apple pie order for the Englishmen when they get here.
I just hope we have a fine day Sunday so the voluntary workers can get stuck into it.
The various programs have been carefully designed to cater for children from 7 years upwards and involve daily sessions that will improve heart and lung function. As the National President of the Australian Council of Health, Physical Education and Recreation, Mr Barry Stanton explains. Just how fit are they?
Well, we've found that the children in Australia, in South Australia where we started, but we've been wider now, are not as fit as they should be and they're a bit fatter than they should be. And we aim to try to improve that situation for Australian children.
In your opinion, do children do enough physical education work at school?
No, we don't believe they do. Their normal activity isn't sufficient to reduce their fatness or obesity or to improve their skill levels. People need time to learn and we don't think there's enough of that at the moment.
A lot of people might argue that by saying they actually go to school to learn things rather than play sport or get fit.
Yeah, well, we would say that getting fit and playing sport is a preparation for life that everyone needs and school's a good place to do it.
I believe in your research in Adelaide you've found that because people do involve themselves in a PE education course, their academic levels do not change.
No, we've identified the situation that although they use more time for learning the games and the skills and doing fitness work, their academic work does not reduce in any way.
The research also points out that the children can work on, say, a 5 or a 10-minute program per day rather than a drawn-out campaign.
Yes, we believe that we should develop them to have an interest and an attitude toward doing something daily, and so short bursts of 10 minutes where their heart rate is elevated so that they can get a fitness effect is much better than doing it once or twice a week over a longer period of time.
How's the reaction been so far from the 100?
Maitland Rotarians had been looking at various ways to mark their 50th anniversary earlier this year, but it was thanks to a trip by past President Jeff Mead to Canada that gave him the idea to erect a sculptured plaque made out of materials that represented the Hunter area. Local sculptor Bruce Coffin worked on the aluminium donated by Alcan and came up with a space frame together with a map marking various Rotarian clubs in the area. After much hard work, the plaque became a reality and was officially unveiled by the Mayor of Maitland, Mr. Ron Walsh. The new sculpture is now a prominent feature of the Rotary Park, proudly established by the club in 1970. More than 80 students from the college were displaying almost 200 photographs, both in colour and black and white. And there was certainly a wide range of subject matter, from still life to colour abstracts and social documentaries.
We would like to thank Newcastle Film and Darkroom Supply. Without them,
from the Newcastle Region Art Gallery, because we are one of the judges of the exhibition, congratulated winner Michelle Yates on her unusual surrealist photograph of a girl taken early in the morning at Merriweather Bars. The photographs will remain on show until Friday the 5th of November.
The brewery complex is covered by both the National Trust and the Heritage Commission. It was built in the late 19th century and operated as a brewery under the name of Castlemaine and Wood Brothers Limited until 1931, when it closed due to the Depression. A couple of years later, it was converted into a depot for breweries in Sydney. During that time, it underwent a number of internal and external changes. Later in life, the site was used as a pink elephant market. Now the historical buildings and grounds are earmarked for another development.